Welcome to Hard Script.
I caught her by accident. It was a Tuesday night, nothing unusual. I had just walked down the hall to grab a glass of water. Our bedroom door was cracked open, and that's when I heard it. Her voice. Low, careful, different. Not the tone she used with me. The tone people use when they're promising things they shouldn't. I just need a little more time, she whispered. He has no idea. By next week, I'll know for sure. I froze mid-step. The glass in my hand felt heavier. She laughed softly into the phone, then said the line that cut through me like a blade. Yes, I want this. I just have to figure out how to tell him. Her words weren't for me. They were about me. I didn't burst in. I didn't shout. I didn't rip the phone from her hand. Instead, I turned, walked back to the kitchen, and let the cold clarity settle in. She thought I knew nothing. That was her mistake. 10 minutes later, she walked into the living room, pretending everything was fine. Same casual smile, same empty questions about my day. I just watched her, quietly, like someone observing a stranger wearing a familiar face. And then I said it. Calm, measured, unshakable. Tell him you'll be free by next week. I'll handle the paperwork. Her entire body froze. The glass of wine in her hand didn't move. Her lips parted, but no words came out. Finally, she whispered, "Wait, what?" I didn't explain. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't ask her who it was. Because explanations would have given her the illusion of power, and questions would have given her the satisfaction of watching me break. Instead, I stood up, walked past her, and started collecting the files from my office drawer, bank records, mortgage papers, car title. I stacked them neatly on the desk. Each sheet was a nail in the coffin she didn't know I'd already built. Behind me, she tried again. A little louder this time, desperate, shaky. You don't understand. It's not like that. But it was. And for the first time in years, I wasn't going to pretend otherwise. That night, I didn't sleep in our bed. I didn't stay to listen to her explanations. I laid on the couch, staring at the ceiling, knowing exactly what I'd do in the morning. Because she thought she was the one planning her exit. But I had just scheduled mine. The morning after was quiet. Too quiet. She made coffee like she always did, moving around the kitchen with that forced normalcy that only guilty people wear. She set a cup down in front of me, tried to smile, and asked if we could talk about what I said last night. I didn't respond. Instead, I slid my phone out of my pocket, logged into the bank app, and began moving funds into a private account I'd opened months ago but never touched. A quiet insurance policy. Her smile faltered when she saw the screen. She said my name, soft, cautious, like I was a bomb she didn't know how to defuse. Then she added, "You're overreacting. It's not serious. I just needed someone to talk to, and you." I cut her off without raising my voice. "You don't have to explain. You'll understand soon enough." Her eyes widened, panic flickering under the surface. She wasn't used to this version of me. She was used to arguments, to raised voices, to late-night pleas for honesty. She knew how to win those battles. But this silence laced with action, she didn't know what to do with it. By noon, I had already changed the passwords to our joint accounts, pulled my name from the credit cards she used most often, and called my lawyer to update the file we'd started years ago when we nearly split the first time. Back then, I stopped short. I thought love deserved another chance. This time, there would be no pause. I walked into the bedroom. She was sitting on the edge of the bed, phone in hand, staring at me like she was waiting for me to explode. Instead, I opened the closet, pulled out the lockbox, and removed the deed to the house. Placed it in my briefcase without a word. Her voice cracked then. "Why are you doing this? Can't we at least talk? You don't even know everything." But that was the thing. I knew enough. Enough to understand that the person in front of me was no longer my wife, but a stranger rehearsing excuses. That evening, she called her sister. Whispered in the other room that I was acting crazy and that she was worried about me. I heard every word. I didn't confront her. I simply wrote down another note in my file. She will try to make me look unstable. It didn't hurt. It confirmed. Because people only lie that loud when they're afraid of the silence that follows. And I wasn't afraid of silence anymore. 2 days later, the cracks started showing. I didn't announce anything. I didn't wave papers in her face or shout timelines across the room. I let the silence do the work. That Friday evening, she came home with grocery bags. Only they weren't full. just one small sack in her hand. Her lips were tight, her face flushed, and she avoided my eyes as she set it on the counter. Later, I heard her on the phone. "It must be some kind of mistake," she told the bank. "The card worked yesterday. Try again." Her tone was brittle, the kind of sharpness people use when they're cornered but trying to sound in control. I didn't interrupt. I sat in the living room, sipping coffee, flipping through paperwork I'd already finalized. After a pause, she raised her voice. "What do you mean the account was restructured? He can't just—" She caught herself, lowered her voice. Then silence. She ended the call and stood in the hallway for a full minute, staring at the wall like it might offer her an escape route. When she finally spoke, it wasn't to me. It was to herself. "This isn't happening." But it was. The next morning, she tried another card at the gas station. Declined. The clerk looked at her with that half-polite sympathy people give when they smell trouble they don't want to be part of. She drove home with the fuel light blinking red. I watched her through the window when she pulled in. She sat in the car for a while, hands on the wheel, eyes forward, not moving, not ready to come inside. When she did, her mask was thinner than usual. No forced small talk, no fake calm, just quiet pacing, her phone in her hand, scrolling, deleting, scrolling again. I didn't ask who she was texting. I didn't need to. The point wasn't who she reached for. The point was that I wasn't one of them anymore. That evening, she finally broke the silence. "You're cutting me off? After everything?" I looked at her, not with anger, not even with pity, just clarity. "You cut us off long before I did." Her jaw clenched. She turned away. But she didn't argue. Not because she agreed, but because there was nothing left to argue for. That was the moment the illusion died. She thought she was weighing her choices, deciding who she wanted, planning her future in whispers. But futures aren't built on secrets. They're built on consequences. And hers had just arrived. By Sunday, she was gone most of the day. She didn't tell me where. She didn't need to. I knew. The silence, the urgency in her steps, the way she grabbed a bag but not her keys to the house, it all pointed in one direction. To him. The man she thought was her future. The man she whispered to in the dark when she thought I was asleep. The man she swore would give her what I somehow couldn't. She came back late that night. Her makeup was smudged, her hair tied in a knot like she hadn't planned to stay out that long. She walked in slow, placed her bag down on the floor, and sat at the edge of the couch without a word. For the first time in weeks, she looked small. Not defiant. Not smug. Just small. I didn't ask her where she'd been. But her silence told me enough. The next day, I got confirmation anyway. Not from her. From a friend of hers who didn't know where loyalty should land. She called it concern. Said Brooke had shown up at Derek's place, unannounced, with an edge of desperation in her voice. She asked him if she could stay for a while. Just a few days. Just until she figured things out. And he said no. Not cruelly. Not dramatically. Just no. He told her it wasn't the right time. That things were moving too fast. That he wasn't ready for that kind of responsibility. In other words, he liked her best when she belonged to someone else. When the risks were mine and the fun was his. But when the cost landed in his lap, he folded. She didn't know I knew. But I saw it all over her face when she walked back into the house that night, pretending she'd just been out with a friend. The lie was too thin, stretched over cracks too wide. And for the first time, she seemed to realize what I'd already understood. He wasn't a rescue plan. He was a diversion. And now, with her bridge to me burning and her new path collapsing, she stood in the middle, alone, exposed, and unprepared. I didn't comfort her. I didn't taunt her either. I just moved past her, picked up my briefcase, and set another appointment with my lawyer. Because while she scrambled to find a hand to hold, I was already using both of mine to close the book. When Derek closed his door, she turned to the only people she thought would still open theirs, her family. I knew it was coming. Brooke had always been the golden child in their eyes, the one who could do no wrong. If something cracked in her life, they glued it back together without asking questions. That was her safety net. But I had already cut the ropes. The week before she even realized how much I knew, I had dinner with her parents. Calm. Simple. I told them the truth. Not embellished, not dramatized. Just facts. I told them she was seeing someone else. That she'd been planning her exit behind my back. That I'd given her every chance to be honest, and she chose secrets instead. Her mother's face dropped. Her father's jaw tightened. Her sister, the one who always saw through Brooke faster than anyone, said nothing, just crossed her arms and shook her head. I didn't ask them to take sides. I didn't need to. The facts did the work. So when Brooke showed up on their doorstep days later, looking fragile, holding back tears, they already knew. She tried to play her role, said I was acting irrational, that I'd blindsided her financially, that I'd overreacted to something that wasn't serious. But her sister cut her off, told her they'd seen the screenshots, the messages, the posts she thought she'd hidden. Brooke froze. Her mother asked, quietly, "Is it true?" Brooke stammered, tried to twist it, said it wasn't like that, said she didn't mean for it to go this far. But intent doesn't erase action. And for the first time in her life, she didn't find sympathy. She found silence. Later, I got a call from her father. Short, direct. He said, "You don't deserve this, son. Do what you need to do." That was all. But it was enough. Because Brooke's safety net wasn't there anymore. She came home that night, eyes red, posture broken. But she didn't speak to me. She couldn't. Not when the narrative she thought she controlled had already slipped through her fingers. And as she sat in the corner of the couch, hugging her knees like a stranger in her own home, I realized the quiet had done what no fight ever could. It isolated her, not me. The next week, her mask finally cracked. Gone was the sharpness, the practiced calm, the half-truths. Instead, she stood in the kitchen one night, tears running down her face, words spilling out like water from a broken dam. She said she was sorry. She said she didn't mean for things to get so far. She said Derek wasn't what she thought he was, that she got lost, that she wasn't herself. I listened, not out of hope, not out of anger, just because I wanted to hear how far she'd go to rewrite the truth when there was no stage left to perform on. She offered promises, said she'd cut him off completely, said she'd go to counseling, said she'd delete her accounts, change jobs, start fresh. Each promise landed with the same hollowness. Not because she didn't mean them in that moment. Maybe she did. But because I knew the difference between regret and fear. She wasn't mourning me. She was mourning the collapse of her own safety net. She wasn't crying over losing love. She was crying over losing control. At one point, she even dropped to her knees, begged me not to file, said she could fix this, that we could go back. That word, back, was the proof I needed. Because love doesn't go backward. And I wasn't walking in reverse. I didn't raise my voice, didn't reach down to lift her up, didn't argue. I simply said, "It's too late." Her face twisted, like she couldn't understand how simple words could cut deeper than any scream. And then she broke completely, cried into her hands, her body shaking, whispering questions she didn't want answers to. How could you do this? How could you just let go? But she didn't realize. I hadn't just let go that week. I'd been letting go piece by piece, every time she lied, every time she smiled while hiding a different life behind my back. The day she thought she was clever enough to whisper into a phone about her freedom, that was the day I finished letting go. All this, the tears, the bargains, the apologies, they were just the echo of a door already closed. I went upstairs, left her kneeling in silence, and packed the last of the documents into a folder. The final step was near. And for the first time in months, I slept without waking once. Because nothing weighs less than a love you no longer carry. The appointment was set for Thursday morning. A clean hour on the calendar, nothing dramatic about it. Just a signature. Just an official stamp on what had already been real for weeks. When she saw the folder on the table, her voice faltered. "You're really doing this?" I didn't answer. I didn't need to. The silence was louder than any argument. That night, she paced the house. Phone in her hand, dialing, deleting, redialing. She tried calling my brother, then her sister, then, I assume, Derek. None of it changed anything. By Wednesday, she was unraveling. She sent me a text while I was at work. "Please, just wait. Give me one more week." I didn't reply. Half an hour later, another came. "You don't understand. I can fix this if you let me." Still nothing from me. By the evening, the messages had shifted. Not pleading, threatening. She said she'd make sure everyone knew what kind of man I really was. That she'd tell people I abandoned her when she needed me. I put the phone down. Because people who panic always cycle the same way. Beg, bargain, blame. and I'd already stepped out of that circle. The next morning, I left early for my lawyer's office. Clean suit, briefcase in hand, my expression steady. She must have tracked my calendar, or guessed, because she was already there, standing outside the building, arms folded, eyes wild with that mix of desperation and pride. "Nate, please," she said, her voice low but shaking. "Don't go in there. Just talk to me. We can work this out." I walked past her. She grabbed my arm, nails digging slightly, voice breaking. "Please, don't leave me like this." I stopped just long enough to look at her. Not with anger, not even with pity, just with the calm of someone who had already gone too far forward to ever turn back. "You left first," I said. Then I pulled my arm free, pushed the door open, and stepped inside. She stayed on the sidewalk, frozen. And for the first time, it wasn't me trapped in her silence. It was her. The papers slid across the desk with a dull scrape. Black ink. My signature. Her absence. That was it. Years of marriage condensed into a folder, notarized, and filed. No shouting, no courtroom drama. Just quiet finality. I left the office lighter than I expected. The sun felt different on my skin. The city noise didn't sound like pressure anymore. It sounded like possibility. When I walked out, she wasn't there. For a moment, I wondered if she had finally accepted it. But later that evening, my phone buzzed. A message I didn't open, but I read enough in the preview. "You really did it. I can't believe you actually." The words cut off there. I didn't tap to see the rest. Because belief wasn't my concern. Action was. She had believed for too long that her choices came without consequences. That she could balance me in one hand and another man in the other, waiting to see which felt heavier. But consequences don't wait for belief. They arrive when the silence gets too loud to ignore. That night, she tried again. Called twice. Left a voicemail I didn't listen to. And for the first time, the silence was hers to sit in, not mine. The next day, I started small. Bought a new set of sheets. Rearranged the living room. Not because I needed change, but because the house had been frozen in her absence. A stage set for a play that had ended months ago. Now, it belonged to me. Friends reached out, some cautiously, some with relief. They said I seemed different. Lighter. Clearer. They weren't wrong. Because when you cut out the weight of someone else's deception, you don't just free yourself. You rediscover the person you left behind while carrying it. Meanwhile, word got back to me. Not directly from her, but through the inevitable whispers. She'd been telling people I blindsided her. That I didn't fight. That I gave up too easily. But the truth is, I hadn't given up. I had finally stopped fighting battles she created just to watch me bleed. And when the silence between us finally landed on her shoulders, it didn't sound like freedom. It sounded like loss. Permanent. It didn't take long for her to make her move. 2 weeks after the papers were signed, she arranged a dinner. Not family, friends. Mutual ones. People she believed could be persuaded. The invitation wasn't sent to me directly. It came through a friend who still lingered on the edge of her circle. He forwarded the message with a shrug. "She wants to explain her side." I didn't reply, but I knew what it was. A stage. One last attempt to control the narrative. To paint me as the man who checked out too soon, while she positioned herself as the one who fought to the end. That used to work. Years ago, I would have shown up, ready to defend myself, ready to prove her wrong. But battles only exist when both sides step onto the field. And I had no intention of stepping there again. The night of the dinner, I stayed home. Ordered takeout. Watched the city lights move across my window like a slow tide. Meanwhile, I imagined the scene she had curated. Her carefully chosen words. The dramatic pauses. The lowered voice when she spoke about how hard it's been. The way she probably tilted her head, searching for sympathy. But here's what I also knew. Without me there, without my presence to push against, her story would feel hollow. A monologue without tension. A script without an audience. And later, I got confirmation. A friend who had attended texted me. "She tried to make it about you. But nobody bought it. People just sat there. It was awkward." She left early. I didn't ask for details. I didn't need to. Because silence has a way of turning lies inside out. When someone expects a reaction and gets none, their words start to echo back at them, revealing the cracks they tried to hide. By the end of that night, she wasn't the victim. She wasn't even the lead character anymore. She was just noise. And me? I was free from the stage entirely. The story wasn't mine to defend anymore. It was hers to drown in. And nothing silences an act faster than an empty audience. It came on a Sunday evening. The city was quiet, and I was sitting by the window with a book half open on my lap when my phone buzzed. Her name lit the screen. I didn't open it right away. I let it sit there, glowing in the dark, the same way her secrets once sat between us, unspoken but loud. Finally, I glanced at the preview. I hope one day you understand I never meant to hurt you. I just got lost. I'll always care for you. It wasn't an apology. It wasn't accountability. It was a last grasp at rewriting the past, softening betrayal into mistakes, reducing choices into confusion. And maybe, in her mind, that message was closure. But for me, closure had come long before. It came the moment I watched her whisper into a phone, thinking I was blind. It came when I moved money out of reach, when I locked the doors she thought she still had keys to. It came in every moment of silence where I chose not to argue, not to beg, not to fight for a seat in a story she had already erased me from. I didn't type a reply, not a word, not even a dot, because some things deserve to end exactly as they are, unfinished, unanswered, unwelcome. The message stayed there, unread, until the notification faded into the background like dust settling on a shelf. And in that silence, I realized something she never would. She hadn't lost me the night I signed the papers. She hadn't lost me when her family stopped defending her. She hadn't even lost me when her lover turned her away. She lost me the moment she thought I knew nothing. Because when you mistake silence for ignorance, you forget silence can also be strategy. I closed the book in my lap, turned off the light, and let the night have me. Her final words weren't mine to carry, and my final words weren't for her. They were for me. You walked out long before I did, but I was the one who never came back. And with that, the story ended, not with a fight, not with forgiveness, but with freedom. Support the channel by liking, commenting, and subscribing. I promise even more interesting stories.